There are two drawing modes available to you when using the drawing tools in Flash, Merge Drawing Mode and Object Drawing Mode. To demonstrate Merge Drawing Mode, I'm going to start with a blank FLA document in Flash and select the Rectangle tool. In the Property Inspector, I'm going to choose what color the outline or stroke of my rectangle is going to be. I'll pick black, and I'll also choose a color for the fill. I'll pick yellow. Before drawing a rectangle, let's make sure that we're using Merge Drawing Mode. So when you select a tool, the Properties area underneath the toolbar also changes to show you more options available for that tool. For our rectangle, we see a little icon that looks like a circle within a square. This icon toggles between Merge and Object Drawing modes. Merge Drawing Mode is the mode selected by Flash as the default when you start a new FLA, and you can see that the icon is kind of a light gray color. If you click on the icon, it turns a darker gray and puts you into Object Drawing Mode. We want Merge Drawing Mode, so make sure the icon is the lighter gray color. The difference between the light gray and the dark gray can admittedly be a little subtle, so if you're not sure which one you've got, just draw a rectangle on the screen by clicking and dragging. Then use your arrow tool and select the rectangle. If your Property Inspector shows that the selected object is a shape, then you know you're in Merge Drawing Mode. If your Property Inspector says a drawing object, you're in Object Drawing Mode. So Merge Drawing Mode is basically for drawing ungrouped shapes. This rectangle is really just a blob of color on the stage that happens to be in the shape of a rectangle. So in Merge Drawing Mode, the stroke or the outline of a shape is treated separately than the fill. I'm going to click once on the stage to deselect, and now if I click just once in the middle of the rectangle, notice that only the fill is selected. You can tell because it has that kind of stippled pattern of dots. If I drag and drop the rectangle elsewhere on the stage, only the fill goes. I'm going to hit Ctrl-Z to undo that move. Now, when I double-click on the rectangle, you'll see that both the fill and the stroke are selected, allowing you to move both of them together. It's a common mistake to click only once on a shape and select just the stroke or the fill, so try to remember that you have to click twice to get both the stroke and fill. Now I'm going to click on the pasteboard to deselect the rectangle and approach one of the edges of the rectangle with my mouse. You'll notice how a small icon of a curved line appears. When that's visible, you can change your rectangle shape by clicking and dragging out the edge. Similarly, if you approach a corner of your shape with the mouse, you'll see a little angle icon appear, which allows you to click and drag the angles to modify. If you select and move your fill away from your stroke, then deselect by clicking the pasteboard, you'll see that this technique still works on both the fill and the stroke separately. I'm going to undo that change. So here's a few behaviors that are unique to Merge Drawing Mode, and is perhaps where Merge Drawing Mode got its name. In the toolbar, I'm going to click and hold down on the Rectangle tool, and you'll see the Oval tool hidden underneath that. I'm going to choose the Oval tool, and in the Property Inspector, choose Red for the fill. This time, we're not going to have any stroke, so I'll choose the icon of a white rectangle with a red diagonal line across it to indicate no stroke for my oval. So I'll draw the oval and select and drag so it's positioned partially over the yellow rectangle fill. If I leave the red fill selected, I can just continue moving it around. However, when I place it over the yellow, then deselect by clicking on the pasteboard, now I'm going to select and move the red fill again, you can see that the red kind of cut its shape out of the yellow. This behavior can be useful or annoying depending on what you're trying to do, so try to remember that this is how shapes drawn in Merge Drawing Mode behave. There's kind of an opposite behavior as well. I'm going to select my circle and in the Property Inspector change the fill color from red to the same yellow as the rectangle. Now I'll move the circle over the rectangle and deselect everything by clicking on the stage. Now, when I select the yellow fill, you'll see that the two shapes have been merged or fused together. If you want to be able to move all of your shapes on the screen as a unit, you can select all, which is Command or Control-A on your keyboard, and then go to the Modify menu and choose Group. You could also hit Command or Control-G on your keyboard to group. Now when you select any of the shapes, you select the whole group, and indeed, the Property Inspector no longer shows that we've got a shape here, instead we've got a group. You can move the group around as you wish, and then you can even double-click on the group to step inside the group to edit the individual shapes. Notice how above the stage it says Scene 1 and then Group. Your shapes behave just the way that they did before they were grouped. You can now move them around individually and so on. I'm going to undo that change. When you're done, just be sure to click on Scene 1 to step back out of the group. Ungrouping the shape is just as easy. You just select your group and then go to Modify and Ungroup. So that was Merge Drawing Mode. Object Drawing Mode draws shapes on the stage where the stroke and the fill aren't able to be individually selected. It's similar to a group in that shapes are already kind of stuck together for you. To demonstrate, I'm going to choose the Oval tool again, and in the Property Inspector, make the fill blue and the stroke black. So let's make sure that we're using Object Drawing Mode. So in the area underneath the toolbar, I'll click on the Drawing Mode toggle button to make it turn the darker gray, and then that puts us into Object Drawing Mode. I'm going to draw 2 circles on the stage, and when I do, notice immediately in the Property Inspector that we're looking at drawing objects as opposed to a shape like you get with Merge Drawing Mode. Also notice that my selected drawing object has this rectangle around it to indicate that it's a drawing object. Shapes don't have that. When I use my arrow tool to click and drag the circle around, notice that the stroke and the fill move around together. You can't select either one of them separately like you can with Merge Drawing Mode. Notice also that when I use the arrow tool to move one circle on top of the other, click on the pasteboard to deselect everything, and then move the second circle away, both circles remain their own discrete shapes. If this were Merge Drawing Mode, the 2 circles would have fused together or cut each other out depending on the color. So you can see how Object Drawing Mode really lives up to its name. Each shape you draw is its own individual object of sorts, unaffected by others on the same layer, as Merge Drawing Mode shapes are. With drawing objects, I can still click the pasteboard to deselect, and then approach the side of the circle with the mouse, and the little icon of the curved line appears. I can drag the edge of the shape out to modify it, just like we did in Merge Drawing Mode. You can further edit your drawing objects by double-clicking on them to step into them, as I'll do now. Notice how at the upper left of the stage, it now says Scene 1 and then Drawing Object. Additionally, the other items on the stage look faded out since they're back up on the main timeline. While stepped into the drawing object, I'll select the fill of the circle and look in the Property Inspector. It says Drawing Object. However, the behavior is really that of simple shapes. I can select the fill individually and move it away. I can move the fill on top of some of the stroke, and then click the pasteboard to deselect. And now when I move the fill away, you'll see that the stroke that was covered up is now cropped off. Indeed, our items on the screen here are behaving like shapes. So I'm going to click Scene 1 to return to the main timeline, but you can see that really what Object Drawing Mode is doing for you is grouping the fill and the stroke of a shape for you automatically when you draw the shape. This is a little different than grouping a shape together with Ctrl-G, as we did before, since grouping items on the screen simply allows you to move them around as a group. A drawing object, in essence, groups stuff together, but you can still modify the outlines by deselecting everything by clicking on the pasteboard and then approaching the edge of your shape. I can also still change the fill in the stroke. If you find yourself wanting a drawing object to behave more like a merge drawing object after you've created it, simply select the shape, right-click, and choose Break Apart. Now, when you click on either the fill or the stroke, the Property Inspector shows that you're working with shapes. You can also go the other way with merge drawing objects or shapes that you want to change into drawing objects. I can go to Modify, Combine Objects, and then Union. Now when I click on the shape, in the Property Inspector, it says Drawing Object, not Shape. So we've seen that Merge Drawing Mode essentially results in shapes being drawn on the screen with the fill and the stroke separate. Merge drawing shapes can kind of cut each other out or fuse together, depending on the color. Object Drawing Mode is more of a convenient way to have the shape's stroke and fill grouped together for you when you draw the shape.